Hello everyone. Today I have an in-depth analysis looking at the work of Scott Listfield, a modern artist that paints a unique perspective on our world. This is the first video that shall continue on into its own playlist. I discovered Scott Listfield through the Art People Gallery website, or rather through the Facebook page that they have that gives me constant, beautiful, and insightful artwork to look at and assess. If you have a Facebook page, I'd highly recommend liking the Art People Gallery page. I plan to do other artist analysis videos and shall likely be pulling source material from modern artists who are alive and creating art still today, as I very much care for the well-being of the proletariat and their notoriety and don't feel the need to do videos on artists like Jackson Pollock or Magritte because there are already YouTube videos and documentaries and memorials, and these artists and their work is now it's worth thousands or millions, while far too few videos are done on artists who I believe deserve to have some praise and acknowledgement while they're still alive. To kick off this playlist, I felt it necessary to start with Scott Listfield, whose work I personally admire and feel should be just as valued now as I know it will be later. Listfield was born in 1976 in Boston, Massachusetts. He's known for his paintings featuring a lone exploratory astronaut lost in a landscape cluttered with pop culture icons, corporate logos, and tongue-in-cheek science fiction references. Scott's description of his work is short and simple, gets the point of his work made well aware, but I'd like to extend my own personal takeaways that I've felt or found while viewing his work. Listfield tells an ongoing story of a completely unknown character. Themes like the iconic science fiction are present, but the mood of the painting deals more in alienation and isolation of this wandering character in a world not too dissimilar from our own. A capitalized and incorporated world that presents itself blatantly, and often intrusively, onto all of us. Despite the astronaut quite obviously being faceless, he or possibly she is quite expressive in action or in reaction to what's going on. The astronaut is a personification of anyone. As such, he or she is undeniably relatable to anyone. Scott Listfield takes the mundane and ordinary iconography of everyday life and mocks at the interruptive and nearly alienating quality all of these images, symbols, ads, and logos possess. His work, in my opinion, is that of a modern surrealism, illustrated through this nameless, faceless astronaut character. Books, television, movies, and art are often never exactly like the world in which we live, but rather they are reflections of the world in which we live. Listfield challenges the arbitrary conventions and symbols that lure over us in everyday life. Take a look at this piece, Frank Taking a Dump. It mocks at the very institution of art, particularly modern art, and the lunacy of art such as this being placed in museums. The tourists nearby show some form of reaction, but what's interesting here is that we really can't tell if they're in shock or awe at Frank. It reminds me of the indiscernible facial expression of the Mona Lisa, and often some of the most thought-provoking imagery in art is within faces that we can't quite get a perfect read of. But when a face is hard to read, the body movement and expressions of the figure stand out. We never see the facial expressions of the lone astronaut, but despite being a faceless protagonist, he or she is the most expressive and relatable character in this narrative world that Listfield has made. The expressions of the audience in Frank Takes a Dump may be somewhat indiscernible, but the reaction of the faceless astronaut is oddly the most reactive to Frank despite not having a face or gender. The astronaut is a few paces apart from everyone else. His or her arms are firmly tucked at the sides with hands output in a sort of stressed way. The stance seems rigid and uncomfortable, as it really should be. Frank taking a dump and being considered art is rather ridiculous and preposterous. The very idea that it could be art seems to be an alienating concept. Alienation seems to be an integral focus to the artist's narratives. The astronaut in every image Listfield depicts has this alien presence about its very existence, a figure behind a protective suit viewing a mostly harmless world. Often the astronaut is the only figure in many of the compositions, and as such the only figure we can grip onto in the composition. But This constant viewership of the world through the visor of the astronaut is a mirror for any individual who views these compositions. You are just as much a viewer looking at an unusual image just as the astronaut is a viewer trying to understand our world. This clever acknowledgement of how the compositions are mirroring back to you makes you not only view the work, but interact with it. Listfield employs many a composition with mirrors or reflections. The use of mirrors and reflections are especially psychedelic in paintings and often break the fourth wall of art itself. Take this one here, McDonald's. The astronaut is facing us, and there is this obvious reflection in the visor, but the reflection is of a McDonald's logo. It's so profound and thought-provoking it's nearly beyond description. The astronaut, as usual, is viewing our world, but as the figure is looking directly at us, we would expect to maybe see a reflection of a human figure. But instead, we see the most iconic fast food chain logo of all time in the visor. Likely, this is saying something about the nature of our consumer society and mocking both us and the institution at the same time. Where we should see his face or ours, we see a reflection of a fast food chain, and instantly I think of the infamous idiom, "You are what you eat." But being as it is in a reflection, it makes me think, because it's calling me, the viewer, out, you can't help but maybe asking yourself about the pervasive nature inside the world of today. We eat what they provide, and they provide what we eat. But really, we're chewing on ourselves. Scott doesn't only provoke this metaphorical cannibalism, but he opens a can of the real thing. In this Soylent Green composition, we all know it's people, but the astronaut observer is once again looking back at us, the viewers. Listfield doesn't just make you think, he makes you cringe. Listfield investigates the world and puts it up on an artistic trial. He utilizes pop culture references like McDonald's, Star Wars, Nike, Coke, Pepsi, and several others, and real-world imagery like wars, windmills, skyscrapers, and even art itself. Many of his works are full of intentional product placement and corporate logos, like these compositions. The astronaut is looking away as if an attempt to ignore the fast food or corporate logos looming behind, and although the figure looks away from it, we can't. We're looking directly at it. The logos overshadow the poor astronaut and devour the canvas. But their redundancy is what makes them provocative. It instills a mind-numbing message that can't be ignored. Capitalism on overdrive. What much of the world tries to metaphorically paint is the benevolence of a booming free market system, the wonders of mercantilism, and the private sector being a force of stability for the world. But in Listfield's work, it shows us that these ads, logos, and sponsors are not necessary, they're intrusive. It's not just rape of the natural world, it's rape of the artistic world as well. Think about YouTube and videos you're watching. When YouTube was first incepted, it was this wonderland of creativity and free expression. Now it's like the cable television of the 21st century. What started as the online public broadcast station has become this privatized, monetized entertainment land. Ads are plastered all over this network of creativity. Videos are literally littered with pop-ups and pre-roll ads. It's a hot mess and becoming a hotter mess every day. Scott Listfield seems to be able to capture the essence and fragrance of our world, and that fragrance is called money, ads, logos, and sponsorships. Art can be an escape from our world or a reminder of it. Listfield is a contemporary artist that can amazingly accomplish both tasks simultaneously in a single composition. I can't say for sure, but I'd like to believe that this wandering, disillusioned, alienated astronaut character is likely a representation of the artist himself. The artist is unloading the iconography of the world into his work, and at the same time trying to make sense of it. Listfield, in my eyes, is a revolutionary in the history of art and really should deserve a section into the chapters of art history. To me, his genius will be timeless. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to let go of my digital hand and reflect further on Listfield's art for yourself, I've made an additional viewing experience video accompanied by an alternative music soundtrack. The alternative genre of music perfectly complements to the viewing experience of Listfield's art because As far as Listfield is concerned, and as far as we're concerned, we don't live in the ideal world depicted by visionaries of the past, but we don't live in an utterly flawed dystopia sort of world either. We're living in this interesting alternative one. So definitely check out the viewing experience video. I hope you're enjoying this commentary. I hope you've enjoyed Virtue and Insight thus far. And until then, I'll see you next time.